Offers nuclear developers something unprecedented. Everybody greenwashed into new initiatives. Fuel cycle staged out, private flora clinical. Fast track startup, make the risk lip trivial. Test floor shield wall, all the boys try. So baptized, DOE nightlife, everybody so dead-eyed. Pilot run, first of a kind, sell it for a limited time. Critical by July, what price? Anderson act like. Direct access to national nuclear expertise. Everybody too calm, whole scene radioactive. Press shots, make the waste photogenic. Dress code, make disaster anthropogenic. Launchpad USA, wide-scale commercial deployment. Whole crew run deep, say less, stay sleek. Nuclear launchpad, dead concepts, investors restless. Nuclear launchpad, fast-track enrichment innovations. Mox, fuel in my cup. Nuclear launchpad, come on baby, get strapped up. INL out back, whole yard operational. Authorization chain, all optics intentional. Hot cell, sealed bay, whole mood, look commercial. Bury what you can't solve, then rename it essential. Fuel bay, boys, paper suits, dead optics. Closed circuit monitor, whole process look narcotic. Launchpad on my lips, make the rollout sound harmless. If the whole world pays later, they don't even wanna face it. Red lane, low tone, everybody too ready. Talking like a half-life, only hurts if you let it. New core, old waste stream, but branding stay heavy. If it all goes first critical, they'll just call it legendary. Launchpad USA, commercial deployment. Whole crew run deep, say less, stay sleek. Nuclear launchpad, dead concepts, investors restless. Nuclear launchpad, fast track enrichment innovations. Mox, fuel in my cup. Nuclear launchpad, come on baby, get strapped up. No, I wanna say waste stream, no, I wanna say routine venting. Everybody says nuclear is clean, nobody wanna notice dry cat. No, I wanna say fallout, no, I wanna say midnight rockets. Everybody loves the rollout till the PR funds run out. Concepts, investors restless. Nuclear launchpad, fast track, first critical. Nuclear launchpad, got Mox, fuel in my cup. Nuclear launchpad, come on baby, get strapped up. Nuclear launchpad, expertise streamline to pathway. Nuclear launchpad, world pace, not ever
Hello, and welcome back. Hello, and welcome back to madness. This is madness. So officially, they're up there on top of Reactor 2 in Fukushima Prefecture, at the Daiichi plant, which is absurd to suggest. I mean, it's absurd to suggest that you're at the top of a building. That's the official picture, by the way. Remember that contraption they got on the back of it? It was built off-site and assembled by remote-controlled cranes. They're claiming they're taking the fuel out of a pool. But the evidence, from the original evidence, the most important evidence, is when it happened, right? That year, the first couple of years in particular, when stuff was trickling out. Reactor 2 core melted through the containment vessel. You're not going in that building. There's no fuel pools above that. You'd have a 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. How much evidence do you really need? I got it for you. Hang around. It's ridiculous, right? Hi, Dana. Dana Nasana, here's moderator. She's got the cushy job. Trolls are terrified of that chat room. Is it time for a worldwide nuclear industry audit in light of Japan's Reactor 2 fuel pool allegations that they're taking fuel out of the pool? It's absurd to suggest here. And so the first audit should be United Nations. All United Nations entities should be banned worldwide. They're a curse. They're a curse on humanity. and the species. The entire sub corporations they have set up, like UNICEF and IRPA and UNSCLEAR and the IPRC and International Atomic Energy Agencies and the world this and the world that and the world, they've taken over your planet and they destroyed every facet of it. And people are just blindly following the Pied Piper UN over the cliff. The workers lost the race to save one of the reactors. The atomic reactor too. He said they didn't add it. There was no danger of a Chernobyl-style catastrophe. Now he was out in Bloomberg, is it? That's where that quote I think came from. We got the video of it, even though I'm hesitant to think that I'll find it. Just give me one ha-ha moment. I got anti-science Bloomberg folder here. That's not the videos, though. That's okay. Let me go back to... Just give me 1 second, because if I can find Leahy... Because I remember that video, right, of him... There should be a few Bloomberg videos. So Kelly, oh, there's Lacey. Oh, that's Lacey. Not Leahy, but Lacey. I got the names wrong. Blake Barrett. I should be in jail forever. Just let me put in Leahy. I got Lacey again, eh? Oh, well, we won't worry about it. I thought it'd be nice if I had the video, because I was looking at this earlier. Richard Leahy, who was head of the safety research for boiling water reactors at General Electrics. Actually, just let me double check the spelling. Because, you know, So Unit 2 fuel pool is gone. They acknowledged that 15 years ago. But now they're on top of the building getting the fuel out of the pool. And there's a lot of people said it's not another Chernobyl, and they were all wrong. They knew they were wrong. Oh, this is Horst Lacey. Yeah, so the spelling is totally different. Should we listen to it for a few yucks? It's only 50 seconds long. If it's chopped out, it's usually because I found something rotten. Might as well do it. And 1, and 2, 3, and
Want to get more analysis now because I'm joined again by our guest Ian Hore-Lacey of the World Nuclear Association.
Then it has appeared that the used fuel pools up near the top of the buildings have been depleted of water and overheating. That's been the focus. That's been the footage of helicopters dropping water, I think, very ineffectively. But the fire brigade has fixed it, I think, for the time being. And now they're connecting power, so they should be able to get pumps going and replenish those spent fuel storage pools. But the implications of those completely drying out are quite serious, and that's why it's been a high priority to get water back into those.
Ian Hore-Lacey of the World Nuclear Association, thanks so much for sticking around.
Sticking around. Let's just talk about this for 1 second, because this kind of... Like, the whole story is so crazy. She had reactor 1, 2 is in the middle of between reactor 1 and reactor Medusa, and then the other Medusa, reactor 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This was 23rd of March. This is the 15th. Everything was gone. The fuel pools were all gone. So to suggest, for Leahy to suggest, which was General Electric's, right? He was the head of the safety research for General Electric, the people that built it. Oh, no, it's not another chair. No, well, no talking, no. There should be the death penalty for these people. These are just horrific monsters. I mean, first off, you had Reactor 1 and Reactor 3 detonate. And now Reactor 3 was different than Reactor 1. That's why the explosion is such much. It was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. I know I stutter and slur. You would too if you had the shit in my head that I got every time we look at these pictures. Laley did add there was no danger of a Chernobyl-style catastrophe. Each of the reactor cores at the top, there was around 8 to 9 reactor cores, up to 15 at the top of the buildings. And each of them were pure uranium, pure plutonium. Reactor 3, for instance, which is right alongside of Reactor 2. Reactor 2 was completely gone. I'm going to show you that tonight. These are complicated stories, important stories. These are planet-changing stories. Just one of these buildings is way worse than all nuclear meltdowns combined. Not counting the reality that there was 3 decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings. And because the fuel they're using is so the fuel they're using is pure uranium plutonium. And Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. It was a small reactor. It was a new reactor. It was a terrible reactor. It was always hemorrhaging. There was no containment in those reactors. There's a couple of them still running today, believe it or not. The industry is evil. There's not a single redeeming quality of the industry. At the top of the buildings was up to 15 reactor cores. Because it's such highly enriched uranium plutonium, they have to change the reactor cores more often than other reactors. And they changed it in increments, typically of about 1/3, but eventually they're going to change half a reactor core at a time. Once it gets up to like a decade old, 14 years old, because there's so much neutron bombardment going on to the infrastructure, it makes the fuel much more intense. Right? There's a natural neutron source. If you took all the fuel out, there's a huge neutron source from the Wigner effect upon the materials, which is, Wigner effect is, so like if you got a really strong magnet and you got a bucket of nuts and bolts and screws and washers and stuff, and you leave that really strong magnet there overnight, what's going to happen to all those screws? They're going to become magnetized. Now, magnetized and nuclear is a totally different world, but they have this particular property that is similar, whereas magnetized, you can fill your pockets up with magnets, it's not going to hurt you. It might even do you some good, actually. Whereas in proximity, this it'll melt your organs. And because Reactor 1 ejected 9 reactor cores all over the site, and Reactor 3 all over that part of the country and the site, because, it ejected the fuel out of the buildings, and so you're on Reactor 1 is one side of the building. I'm pointing at the screen. Reactor 1 is on one point of the site, and Reactor 3 is on the other side of, Reactor 2. So Reactor 2, I know I sound schizophrenic. Now the reality of it is, you see this stack right here? That's 25 sieverts at the base of it today. You're not getting near Reactor 2 without getting serious health consequences within an hour. But the original, this is the 15th. So Reactor 1 clearly gone. Reactor 2 had just detonated. It detonated 3 times. Reactor 4 and Reactor 3 was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor on the other side of the reactor. Like, it's absurd, the stuff they say. It's absurd. And so they knew this on the 14th, day 3, when the Medusa plutonium mixed oxide reactor detonated. And it threw the fuel assemblies all over the sites. So they've never been inside a reactor 2. You can't get in there. So there was no way to put, even if there was fuel pools there, they couldn't have put water in it. They couldn't get close to it without lethal doses. It didn't matter how stoic or brave you are. You couldn't infiltrate it. It didn't matter how many paper suits you had on. I think everybody in the nuclear industry on camera, live streaming on YouTube, should be put in a paper suit and told to go to unit 3, 2, 1 or whatever. They'll claw the eyes of everybody in front of them because you can't fight like a real person because they're chicken necks their whole lives. They're useful idiots. They're serial killers. They're stupid, highly educated, stupid, incompetent idiots. And there's a lot of them comes to the university. You get degree after degree after degree because they're too incompetent to get a job. And so the university basically sells them out to corporations that need morons that are educated and can be fixated. Typically are functional autism. That's the majority of these people in real life. Cannot carry out a conversation, say, in a coffee shop. They meet, so the coffee shop says, nice day, and they're literally dysfunctional. But which is perfect Muppets for the industry. The industry can only exist by hiring Muppets and monsters. Nobody in their right mind would function in that kind of an industry because it's a lethal industry. Just look what they're doing to you in your hospitals, and you sit there and take it. And you sign a paper to let them murder your loved ones in the hospital because you trust them, because the TV has made you complacent. Excuse me 1 second there. The lady said there was no danger of a Chernobyl-style catastrophe. Well, you had 15 or so reactor cores detonate. Each of them 100 Chernobyls. You had 4 buildings with those exact same attributes where they lost their entire inventories because 1,200 miles of the coastline was flattened. One of the best evidences out there are pictures they released themselves. So you got people in paper suits spraying a reagent to bind with fuel particulates all over this area to stop because the fuel particulates are splitting atoms. The atoms then are creating a hostile environment for any species. Now you got people in paper suits. These are not going to be academics or scientists or anybody else in the industries because you couldn't get them near there, and you certainly won't get them there in a paper suit. A paper suit can't help you. It does nothing for you. It gives, well, the idea is to give you the illusion, the homeless and destitute, the illusion that they're protected. So this was today, June the 2nd, 2026. Nuclear fuel removal from Fukushima No. 2 reactor fuel pool. They forgot to put the word fuel there conveniently. And they didn't put the word nuclear up. They put the N-word. So N-word fuel removal from Fukushima No. 2 reactor pool. Well, there's 2 pools. It's a very unlikable industry. With all the terrorists on the planet, how come they don't go to one of their meetings? Because they're all terrorists. Let me show you. Now, they've done this multiple times. So they removed the fuel from the pool at the top of reactor 4. Now, if you're sensible, you're going to say, well, there is no fuel pool top of the building. The building doesn't exist, Dana. Duh. So that's one fuel pool. There's another fuel pool on the other side, which is supposed to be a temporary transfer. So it would come out of the reactor core, which is at the top of the building, underwater, It transfers to temporary, you can put it there for several years, storage pool. And then there's a blow-up barrier between the two fuel pools, and then it would transfer it over to what's known now as the spent fuel pool. They're both spent fuel pools. They're both there at the very top of the building, so if something happens, you can't save. Why would you leave it at the top of the buildings? It's absurd. But you got no choice because it's so difficult to deal with for many, many years. It's splitting atoms. That's why the tall, skinny stacks. See these tall, skinny stacks? They're venting from the fuel pool. Like the vents from the fuel pool to these skinny stacks are the size of your wall in your living room. They're massive vents because of the hydrogen buildup, but also the fuel is in the pool. So every year you're putting more fuel in the pool, say 300,000 pounds a year. Or even, it could be less than that. They could put more than that because they have issues, and then the fuel is not, because the fuel is becomes very brittle from these temperatures and from this bizarre, this should never exist. It's the wrong technology. Even fission and fusion, rather, is the wrong technology. Right? Because you're creating elements that are not indigenous to the solar system, and therefore there's no species on the planet with an immune system that can live in proximity or in harmony with it. It doesn't work, right? It attacks everything with replicating cells. So all 8 million species are under siege. And you don't have to be in your body. You got to be within 600 feet of it. And so you're getting pounded every second. It's a complicated story, but it's nothing you will learn. If you watch the whole presentation, you'll understand the picture. And if you go anywhere else, you'll never learn this. You can't learn this anywhere else. This exists only here. We are the only operation in history to ever come out and explain it to you. And so a lot of people are sucked in to, the prostitutes, which are backed up by $1 billion machines. I'm not backed by $1 billion machine. If I was, nuclear wouldn't exist now, would it? Oh, and by the way, they died that day. You can't go there. They got that job because they were expendable. They were the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language, the favorite tool of the nuclear industry. They've been doing it since their inception. And it's not acceptable. It's time to hold them accountable. Ignoring this is not an option. This industry has the upper hand. It's releasing a toxin, a biological weapon, from 1,000 fuel pools worldwide, splitting atoms. Your planet is under siege. And everything I'm showing you will make sense. Like there's nothing more important than comprehending this assault that you're under. It attacks everything, your water, all your food, your air. You can't escape it. You don't have an immune system to defeat it. It doesn't matter how much money or influence or how poor or impoverished or what country or what nationality or ideology or religion. You have no immune system that can defeat this. And so the emissions from these fuel pools is radioactive fallout. There's 1,000 fuels hemorrhaging radiation. So think of it now, because this is worse because we're 30, 40 years down the road, 50 years down the road of these machines. And because every year there's 12, 14 months or something, they're putting fuel in the pools, 300,000 pounds. Then what that means is each reactor core is boiling water for 1 million homes and businesses. And it does that by splitting atoms. And once you take the fuel out and put it in a pool, it's still doing that forever. And so every year you're adding more to the pool. What happens 30 years down the road? Okay, let's look at it another way. Say I got a garden hose, and every winter, on the coldest days, I turn the garden hose on, and I point it at your house. and I leave it on all winter. And it's warm water, and so it doesn't freeze until it gets up in the air or lands on your property. And then every 12, 14 months, I add another garden hose. And I do that for 4 or 5 decades. So your house is pretty... It's not a spot you can hang out to in the wintertime. One great big mountain of ice, right? Come early spring. Nuclear is doing that from 1,000 fuel pools worldwide, and the emissions travel around the planet in a continuous plume covering your entire planet, but it's invisible. You gotta wake up. You gotta get educated. You gotta make decisions that affects the future of this planet. That's your calling. That's your job. That's your obligation. You're obligated. Nuclear fuel removal from the Fukushima No. 2 reactor pool begins. How are you going to remove fuel from a pool that doesn't exist? Well, it doesn't matter. We got all the medias. We got all the universities. Nobody's going to counter us. We just got one crazy old guy out there who's been beat down and stomped on for decades. One big thorn in the entire nuclear industry is this little tiny voice. And we're pretty good at telling this story, unfortunately. Tokyo Electric Power Holding, which is not a decommission authority, didn't build the reactors, don't know how they work. They're a corporate personhood, and they hire people on. The people that build the reactors are supposed to be in charge. Do you get your kids to fix your Bentley when it breaks down? No. Begin removing nuclear fuel from the spent fuel pool of the No. 2 reactor. Had a stricken Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Daiichi is one, right, in Japanese. The work is considered a key step to decommissioning the reactors at the plant in Fukushima. TEPCO aims to complete the removal of all fuel assemblies from the No. 2 reactor by 2028, next year. Well, 2 years. The No. 2 reactor spent fuel currently stores 587 spent fuel assemblies, which are highly radioactive. Yeah, well, they were in the reactor core making power for millions of homes and businesses. Once you take them out, they're still splitting the atoms. And there's no way to contain it. They're released directly into the environment up those tall, skinny stacks I showed you earlier. So 587 spent fuel assemblies and 28 unused fuel assemblies. Now, why would there be 50,000 pounds of unused fuel assembly in the fuel pool? You wouldn't keep them in the fuel pool for long periods of time or something like that, which... You're talking about over £1 million. Now, because these reactors are very old, they're stuffed. They've been putting fuel in the pools for 30 years. Every year they're putting 300,000 pounds in the fuel. And so now they're claiming there's only £1 million in the fuel. Well, where did the rest of it go? Really, there's 587 assemblies in the reactor core, so there's one reactor core in the fuel pool, which is absurd. But they have to say stuff like that because they can't account for the fuel. It's all gone, obviously, right? It's got, and the reactor 2, and as you'll see, they have more evidence coming up. 28 unused fuel assembly. Now, they're claiming that, which would be 50,000 pounds, they're claiming there's only 600 pounds in an assembly, as if the assemblies were only 1/3 of their capacities, which is 100 fuel rods. The fuel rods are 18 pounds each and they're 12 feet long. You can do the math. And it's 30 years old. So where did all the fuel go? You can't, it takes you a decade. Even if you were moving it somewhere else, it takes you a decade. So there has to be a decade's worth of fuel rods in the reactor fuel pools. There's 2 of them. The unused fuel is being removed first because it poses a lower risk. Of course it is. It's no risk. It's unused fuel. Work began around noon, and it's not volatile until it goes through a chain reaction. Work begins around noon, and 4 unused fuel assemblies were placed into a transport container called a cast over a period of about 3 hours. So 4 fuel assemblies, so 400 fuel rods. And these things are full of fuel rods because they've been running for decades. Unused fuel assemblies. The unused being removed first, blah, blah, blah. Work began around noon, I was kind of shocked. This was the first story, that's right. I was kind of shocked when I read it. And I was kind of like, I was going to do a die-off tonight. Not that I like doing those shows, like I done last night. Which actually was a really important video. Particularly if you're trying to learn. The first hour in particular, I was on my game. Like last night, I barely made it tonight. It busted up. We're finally getting good weather. The regulator for my off-road bike showed up, and I put that on. That was a nightmare. I got that on, and that didn't change the problem I got. So it was kind of disappointing. Zodiac should show up tomorrow. And if I didn't fall down and bust myself up, I would be well ahead of the curve by now, right? So I shouldn't have put the fuel, the voltage regulator on the big bike because when the door closed on my leg a few days ago, and that set me back a long way. I was recovering pretty good. I was actually starting to walk normal. And boom! I slept till noon today. So I'm not doing very good. I never sleep till noon ever, but I couldn't stay awake. We're placed in a transport container called a cast. And like the body's healing, right? But I have so much to do. I'm trying to get it at least something a little bit done every day, and I shouldn't do that because my body doesn't get a chance to heal up, right? But usually, when I was younger, that's what you do. You got hurt, you do a little bit so you didn't seize up altogether, right? It was, it was like physiotherapy. You're not going to do nothing silly. Not that I'm even capable of doing anything silly. Because I got hurt when I was 35. The fact I'm still going is only because I have 7 stents put in my heart valves at the one time to get me back in the game. And I done a show, presentation 2 nights later. Or the next night, the day after, I done a presentation that night, and then I slept for 2 days because I got out of the hospital after 21 days in intensive care. It's just how much a stents in your heart valves changes the game, eh? Couldn't even stand up the day before. I was going to die the day before. If they didn't do it, I would have been dead. Turns out, the nuclear industry not getting rid of me that easy. Radiation levels number 2 reactor building still high. Don't mind me, I'll flash in personal things about me sometimes. Because if I don't, I'll never talk about it. I'll never mention it. And it's kind of important for people that are following the story to understand the bigger picture that I do. I'll show you some of that coming up, actually. Radiation levels number 2 reactor building still high after the nuclear fuel in the reactor melted down in March. Accident. It wasn't an accident. You built it on the tectonic plates with a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis 300 feet high. With a 3,000-year history of massive earthquakes. Well, you built it on the tectonic plates, 70 kilometers from the tectonic plates, the intersection. So what do they think is going to happen? The engineers knew exactly what was going to happen. And they built multiple plants close to those tectonic plates. They've done the same thing on the east side, over by Shika in Ishikawa Prefecture in Nagata nuclear plant. That was shut down since Fukushima. So it was the Shika nuclear power plant on the Noto Peninsula, which is right up, if that fault line ruptured in 2024, January the 1st. 3,500-year fault line. Japan's got to be the stupidest spot to put a nuclear reactor and fuel pools on the planet. And now they've been building since 1996 a reprocessing site. Since 1996. And every year they say, we're going to be finished this year. And then they're saying that again now. Radiation on the 5th floor where the fuel pool is located. And you like this picture here? How about this picture? Isn't that something? We've never seen this before. Radiation, this could be why they hacked me 2 days ago, because they were going to release this story and they were hoping to get me off my game. Somebody probably made a lot of money promising somebody a TEPCO. Because the Japanese government actually has an operation against me called Operation Long Jump. Long Jump. That's what they call it. Operation Long Jump is meant to destroy my reputation and me and put a big dent in my ability to do the things I'm doing. But the only thing they didn't count on, and what they have never counted on, was I hate the nuclear industry's guts. I'll do this for nothing. And I do, all the time. A few people donate, so it makes my life a lot less miserable, but outside of that, I'm not here every night because it's easy either. This ain't easy. I'm not even allowed to make a Freudian slip typically, because it's going to get knocked out, put aside, strung together, all my Freudian slips eventually, and they'll post a little clip. It'll go viral, like all the attacks upon me. And then my responses to my detractors will never get any views. Because I'm not afraid of anybody. I have no fear of anybody. I do nothing to anybody. So I don't fear anybody. I can take care of myself. I'm not worried about the industry. I'm not worried about a bunch of chicken neck cowards any day of the week. They could never win in a debate on top of that. Making it difficult for workers to stay there for a long time. 5 millisieverts. 5,000 microsieverts. 5 millisieverts is not even a percentage of a sievert. It's an insult to say that you're at 4 meltdown buildings. These people are insane. So these are all supposed to be allegedly remote control, but you can see people stood over there. And this is allegedly the fuel pool at Reactor 2, which is, we've never seen it before. Why did they wait till now? Why did it take 15 years? This is a beautiful fuel pool assembly cast. This is a cast, and they're putting the fuel assemblies, which are in bundles. So there's 100 fuel rods. They're 12 feet long and 18 pounds in each of the bundles. So the site itself, you're looking at the Fukushima Daiichi site, and this was the tsunami coming through. So it ran through, and you can see the height discrepancy. You see the tanks there, then you can see the top of the tank underwater. Well, these ran through the reactors and the common spent fuel pool. 1,200 miles of the coastline looked like this. It was a wood chipper. So it ran right through that buildings, and right across the street from Reactor 4 was the common spent fuel pool where they're going to move the... Now remember, they're going to get the fuel out of Reactor 2 fuel pool, right? That's the story tonight. They told us the same story for Reactor 4 and Reactor 3. Ho, here we are, we're getting the fuel in the fuel pool, which are 150 feet above these stumps. Now, unless my eyesight's really, really, really bad, there's nothing on top of these buildings. There's no 100-foot, 50-foot invisible nuclear power plant sections that I ever heard tell of. The explosion was so great it pulverized everything below the buildings too, all the way down through the tours and that. So they put contraptions over these 2 stumps, doesn't physically touch them. They were built off-site and then assembled with remote-controlled cranes, and around 800 homeless people that turned up dead in in urns. They incinerated them and gave them to local religious entities. Former Fukushima Daiichi worker believe the country will be evacuated. Number 4 fuel pool collapses. Well, number 4 fuel pool is this building here. It's about 120 feet above that. So do you think it collapsed? Now, officially, that never happened. So this story is immediately bonkers, trying to have a conversation. And because people can't string it together themselves. And so it's not a pretty picture. La 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 la. Oh, everybody. How's everybody feeling? La 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 la. Do 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 do. Such a crazy story. Is it time for the worldwide nuclear industry audit, particularly United Nations, in light of Japan's number 2 fuel pool allegation? I'll be more than happy to be the chair of the audit. I think I deserve to be in that audit. So, but the contraption's over, poof, everything's good. We got everything out of the fuel pool. You never see this picture anywhere else, by the way. This was extracted from a 2015 picture that was very high quality, quite surprised me, because I'm such a pack rat. I gather up so much. When I seen the size of the file, I was like, oh shit, it was a wide shot of all the reactor buildings, the whole site. And you can zoom in and get these details. We've never seen that before or after. If number 4 collapsed, the country should be evacuated. So if this building collapsed, the country should be evacuated. The Unit 1 and 2 exhaust stack, so I showed you Unit 2 exhaust stack, right? Which is, I'm not sure if it's this one or the other one. Yeah, it's got to be this one here. Is right along, because there's a weird, where I'm here and everything, it looks a bit off center, but it's not. Now, right along between Reactor 1 and Reactor 2, the steam from the China syndrome of Reactor 2 coming out of the ground was 4.7 sieverts per hour. And these are far away. They're up about administration buildings, so they're up on a hill far away. But because those buildings are 190 feet tall, 150 feet wide, that's Reactor 3 stump you're looking at, before they use the cranes to strip it down. So 3 sieverts is a lethal dose. Ignore these people. It's probably not the best picture. I only put the pictures together because I do that sometimes like an idiot. So you got Reactor 4, Reactor 3, then the next one is Reactor 2, the next one is Reactor 1. You've seen Reactor 1 and Reactor 3 explosions, one on each side, right? Inhaling just one particle can cause a cancer, and the average person in Seattle was breathing in at least 10 hot particles a day. Radiation levels in the United States West Coast spiked to over 1 million times normal. It was 1 million to 10 million atoms of Cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. This was a study out of Ottawa, covered the whole entire planet. Extreme increase in mortality by cardiac diseases. There was 865,000 extra cancers. There's an absurd amount of children born with 1 testicles. There's 13,646 out of 38,200 children that have thyroid tumors the size of their thyroid, which is 2 inches by 2 inches, which means they're producing radioactive hormones for their entire development. And it also means you can't have that attribute without radioactive stem cells. So the skeleton is completely catastrophic. But the extreme increase in mortality caused by cardiac diseases was just in a single month. An extra 12,700 people died of heart attacks than ever died in that month in history. Container of number 2 reactor no longer sealed. The French Nuclear Safety Authority, March the 16th. So this was day 5. So this was the day after this picture came out. This was March the 15th. And Reactor 2 is right between two massive reactors. Now, Reactor 2 looks like it's intact. It's in the center. It blew a massive panel. They have what they call blowout panels, pressure panels that will blow out for certain explosions. Now, to give you some kind of scale of how big those buildings, you see the top of Reactor 1, you see the beams going across it. You can actually turn an SUV around on those beams. That's how big they are. The container in the number 2 Fukushima Daiichi reactor was no longer sealed. So that was quite the revelation. The French now, of course, notorious scumbags, but AP revealed doubts about the nuclear expert. The fuel is no longer there. So measuring the temperatures of empty cores are meaningless. Nobody knows where and how hot the melted fuel is. And as you've seen, it was coming out of the ground at enormous temperatures. Study shows deeper meltdown at Fukushima nuclear reactor and our old enemy, Mari Yamaguchi. Some experts have raised questions about achieving a cold shutdown and getting fuel rods below 100 degrees Celsius. Well, first off, everything was gone in 5 days. Like I say, it's pointless measuring temperatures when everything was already gone. Water injection may no longer be able to properly cool down the melted nuclear fuel in Reactor 2. The water injection, this is 2012. The buildings were long gone. But originally they were shooting. Think about this statement now. Reactor 2 was running. So it's up close to 1,000 pounds per square inch. And you're going to use fire hoses to inject into a pressurized container because the power is stripped from the whole coastline. The normal mechanisms don't exist. So that you haven't got enough pressure. You're only at about 60 pounds per square inch. Right, you're going to need something capable of injecting to 1,000 pounds per square inch pressure. And it's going to be a lot hotter because it's overheated, and that creates more pressure. It's a containment, right? TEPCO injects boric acid. Of course, none of this is true. You couldn't do it. Not only that, it was all gone anyway. Fission restarted at Fukushima reactor number 2. Now, that's true. Recriticality. They had multiple explosions. I got that coming up for you. Reports detection of xenon-135. Fukushima reactor. Cores melted right down into the ground. That's radioactive materials getting washed out into the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to make the show tonight. I was out there in the prone position, trying to recover. This is a full-time job since January. I was in a snowstorm trying to deal with a snowstorm, and I took a fall at the end of it, and it's been nothing but bad luck ever since. 135 xenon. Where's the xenon? My eyes are not big enough to see. I know this is right. I don't use it. There it is there. No, that's zirconium. Xenon. I'm not acting stupid, I am stupid. There it is, XE. 135, where you to, you dirty little demon. Has a 9-hour half-life. What does it decay to? 135 cesium. And well, there's a lot of it, because like the short half-lives are This 135 half-life, 2.3 years. Wow. Because we hear a lot about 134, right? With a 2 point, and Cesium 135 with a 2 year. But anyway, I'm getting stupid here now. Is it time for a worldwide nuclear industry audit in light of Japan's nuclear reactor pool allegation? Now, I audited, if you go to my playlist, and audited of Harvard, MIT, let me click on the playlist and you'll get all three of them. So that's 3 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And what I've done was audited Harvard University, MIT's University, and Stanford University's responses, controlled opposition responses to Fukushima. So they came out with an information presentation, and the audiences were complete nuclear students. But the nuclear experts came in on telephones, for instance. But the audience was full of nuclear experts. And they brought in one reporter, what's his name? Thank goodness I can't remember his name because I hated his guts. But he's worked for the nuclear industry now, so he will pop back into the lexicon again. When they had a full audience and the university full of experts. But that is audits. And we audited every lie they told, and that's why the videos are so long, because they had to provide you with the documentation. Because I'm cursed. Or blessed. I'm cursed because it's they're not going to be held accountable. But, just telling the story, providing documentation. Hopefully their loved ones find it and disown them at least. Fukushima reactor core melted right down into the ground. The radioactive material is getting washed straight out into the Pacific Ocean. And if they didn't hack me 2 days ago, I can play you a clip. And I can probably find it, actually. Let me see if I can get lucky. Googly, I got it. So they're going to talk about that statement. That's kind of important too. Might as well include that. And this is a Rupert Winfield Hayes. Now I showed you one of those 4 diagrams. Bear with me. I got a weird life. I got a blessed life. I'm sure. Let me take all that back. I'm very privileged to do the things I'm doing every day, and I would rather do nothing else. Even though, I'm disappointed, right? The research expeditions, which are actually coming up with different pictures. So here's 4 major medias. That's CBS, biggest in North America. BBC is the biggest in Europe. ABC, Cecilia Vega, Australia, is the biggest on that continent. CNN is on multiple continents. Very influential, right? They're claiming they're at the top of the building. Now, the guy up in the corner is Rupert Winfield Hayes. That's 2013. So the official story is both of these pictures. That's the official picture. You can go to IAEA or TEPCO and download that picture right now. It might be a little hard to find, but you'll find it. And these are the official pictures. And these are 2013. Now, I made this in 2013. Made this in 2013. Picture and a video. I don't know if I'll play the video. Probably kind of appropriate, I would imagine. Okay. Rupert Winfield Hayes, 6 months earlier. This is so important. Now they're going to talk about an aquifer below, which is right here. Right here. Okay, let's do this one. I'm going to adjust the volume for you.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
Oh, in Tokyo. The 400 tons a day is equal to 3 garden hoses. 3/8 garden hose, half-inch garden hose is equal to about 140 tons a day. Okay. So don't forget Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, a few days later, or 6 months later, who just narrated that video, is claiming he's on top of Reactor 4, and they're getting all the fuel out of the pool to your left. That is 150 feet above the stump. They've done the same thing for Reactor 3, now they're doing the same thing for Reactor 2. So that's a super important story. Unit 1, 2, and 3 have nuclear waste on the floor from the melted core. That was June 2011. Discharges of Fukushima nuclear material into the Pacific have effectively contaminated the sea. Now remember that giant aquifer that was underneath it? The reactors normally need 4,500 tons every minute. They need 6.45 million one-ton pickup trucks, 1,000 liters each, every 24 hours for each building. So the 4 buildings would have needed an absurd amount. Now we launched exploratory research field study expeditions, and this was up by Alaska. I went from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska for 6 years, 4 to 5 years on the ocean each time, 4 to 5 months on the ocean each time. And this is where I got injured, actually, when I was 35 years old. This is the same spot. You're right at that's the last island in Canada. There's Lucy Island in front of you right there. And then it's 10 kilometers to the Alaska border from there. But you're at the very the most northerly tip of Canada. You're isolated, you're far away. This was a resort. There's a resort for tourists up there. They fly them in by float planes. And the base is Skidegate, and it's a terrifying harbor to get in and out. There's like a half an hour twice a day that is negotiable. Everything after that is just hellish. And we built everything ourselves. And what I would do is the little Zodiac that you can, I burn to probably 5 gallons a week. That's a 2.5 gallon tank. And you can access all the beaches, right? You go right up on the beaches. Very, very shallow. And count your species. And we had our stoic sidekick, and I still miss her so much. She was on all the expeditions, and then she died on a bird expedition with me in my arms out on the ocean, which was an appropriate place for her, bless her heart. It was a difficult few minutes, but she was old. She was 15 years old. And this was a normal picture of Zoe. There's nothing on the beach. And if you find anything, it's mutated. Full of cancer tumors. These, the enormous amount of species, right, the incredible diversity that you would normally find. This is what you should be looking at, right? But here's what we were finding. We were finding mutated starfish, and there was just 2 or 3 of the 80-plus species. Each species typically came in multiple vibrant colors. Incredible mutations, and they no longer look like a starfish. We don't even know what that is. And of course, if Zoe wasn't on the beach, there's no color there. And you can see you have to go out and sneak into, there's 27,000 islands out there, but we're onto is the very last island in Canada. I was diving for 6 hours a day there when I got injured. We were out for 128 days straight. And I got the bends, and that took me out and crippled me since I was 35. And we put in some hard times, man. So algae, there should be 700 algae, but what you're looking at, there's 4 algae. In fact, that area, the tip of Canada, was the only time we ever seen in the 250,000 pictures we got of algae in that quantity. Most of that is bull kelp, kelp weed, and kelp cabbage. But there was no species. Normally there's 5,500 invertebrates without the backbones living in kelp, which are like the little shrimps, right? That's the identified species. There's a lot more. But there's 5,500 of those species. There's usually a lot. There's 4,700 worm species. So the worm casings would be very visible all along the shorelines. The tightest change is 19 feet. So none of the starfish, that's the closest we got to a healthy starfish, but that's still not a healthy starfish. This was unusual to see any kind of remains. Nothing had picked at it. It decayed naturally. And it took quite a while to decay to this stage. There was no flies. And this was another common scene. You would see 1 or 2 of these on the beach. These were babies. Now, if you lift up rocks, you will find the crab babies. And sometimes a few eels. But there was nothing. Now, you shouldn't have to lift up rocks. It's normally an incredible, amazing, inconceivable environment. Instead, it was any species you did find. Now, these green sea anemones, these are the giant plume sea anemones. These are babies. We only found them twice, and that was the only time we found a group of sea anemones, when there should be around 80, 84 species, and each species come in multiple vibrant colors. And we did find, again, a mutated, tumored, nothing but tumor starfish. When there should be incredible when it comes to starfish, it's hard, like as a diver, I'm so familiar with that site over there. You're always careful wherever you're touching because there's so many species. And I used to work in the shallow water a lot. And you can see all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 starfish up there. Every one of them are tumors. Let me just zoom in on that, actually. This is the Fukushima effect. So Fukushima has a real effect. Give me a second, I'll adjust it for you. I know I shouldn't be allowed to own a camera. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But evidence is evidence, even when it's... All of these are tumors. These are nothing but bizarre, deformed creatures. They kind of almost resemble a starfish, but not any starfish pre-Fukushima. These are mutated starfish. This is the Fukushima has killed our oceans worldwide and our forests and the biota in our soil. She's a pretty picture, right? There's a lot of days like that. And because there's 27,000 islands. You're trying to get to the pinch points where the ocean has to get through to get to the other islands and fjords and inlets, right? It's a tropical rainforest. And to see it decimated, the way, like there's no color, everything is like black. Right, there's a few algae, which, and the most prolific algae, out of the 700 algae, there was only around 4. And same thing with the eelgrass up there. I was up there 4 to 5 to 6 months a year, just meandering in any direction I wanted. There was no limits, time limits. There was no movement limits. Because you have so many islands, if you visited every island, it will still take you 71 years. If you visited one island a day. 27,000 islands. And so I would go into groups of islands, go to the pinch points, so when the currents go through there, that's most oxygen. And that's where you would expect to find an oasis. And what I was looking for was an oasis, and I didn't find any oasis. In fact, this was the closest we came to an oasis. Most of the coastline was stripped. And we provide GPSs of all of our research. Completely beyond comprehension, how huge the contamination of the ocean will be. Fukushima put radioactive material poured in the landfills on top of that to enter the seas. They were cleaning up communities and taking it down and dumping it in the ocean and dumping it in the rivers. Because they're the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. But this is what it should look like. Very visible, incredibly amazing. So there's a smorgasbord of food. Like you can go to any beach pre-Fukushima in the entire BC and Alaska and California, basically. But certainly BC and Alaska. And you can pick all the scallops you wanted, all the little necks, all the manillas, all the razorbacks, all the gooey ducks, all the abalones, all the scallops, and all the oysters. There was an incredible amount of periwinkles and snails and mussels that you couldn't even comprehend. Any rock without life had covered mussels and giant plume sea anemones. We used to look for that when you're getting close to shore to put up your anchors at nighttime, because that was like a depth sounder back in the day, right? If it was shallow, you would see them. They were there. They were always there. Officials' death ashes obviously dispersed everywhere after Fukushima. Hot particles attaches to the clothing, so you put it in your laundry, and your children, everybody else's laundry is now contaminated with hot particles. This is catastrophic health consequences. Media is brainwashing the public, and that's what they're doing with Reactor 2. They're doing the same thing for Reactor 4 and then the same thing for Reactor 3. Faked it 100%, and that documentation is in my playlist, all through my videos. But we have videos dedicated in my playlist to telling those stories with the documentation. So there can be no way to misrepresent the truth. That's all. The truth is easy to tell. It's easy to convey. It's just, you've got to try to mix it up a bit. It can consume you sometimes because to me it's so obvious. But I certainly get that it's not obvious to everybody. But if they watch a presentation and they're sincere, they will comprehend the enormity of what is happening to humanity and the 8 million species and our water. It's not acceptable. These are criminals. And the entire nuclear industry the only reason they can come out and claim they're getting the fuel at number 2 reactors because the entire industry is going to sit in silence. All the universities are going to sit in silence and just regurgitate their narratives. There will be no dissenting voices. And that's not acceptable. The 8 million species deserve better than that. Huge spray of radioactive material from plant contained. This is hilarious. species are exterminated. Species to your left, you'll never take those pictures again. They're exterminated. Contaminated seawater was circulated around the globe, and the disaster is like a huge cloth expanding every day. That's a journalist. And that's exactly what happened. The species to your left are exterminated. And it's hard to appreciate how methodical I can be, particularly when I'm doing my research field studies. It's all about documentation. This might be the only chance I get, so everything's important to me. This was in Browning's Passage in British Columbia. These are mutated starfish. There's just a couple of them. Very unusual to see any. And there's around 75, 80 species of sponges. I only seen that in 2 places. Normally, we see the incredible diversity of the shorelines. Would be incredible. So finding anything was insane. But the shorelines were so at low tide. See, low tide, this is what it would look like. Now this is what it looks like. There's no color. And mussels would be, I found a few places. This was one of them, and barnacles. Now, normally barnacles, you do not take a rubber dinghy, first off. You don't put rubber dinghies on beaches where there's absurd amount of sea urchins and barnacles, because bye-bye boat, right? It's gone right away. And I would run my boats right up in the beaches because I was overconfident that there was going to be no harm to my boat, because I'm painfully aware. Now, at the high tide line, and that's the reason I took this particular picture, by the way, at the high tide line is 30,000 insects. They're missing too. And the forests are silent, which was the strangest thing, to anchor in these bays at nighttime and there be no sounds, no birds hanging out with you. Highly radioactive lake has built up in the depths of Fukushima. Now, I played that video for you a little while ago. If you're just joining us now, you can go back and watch it later. And this was a typical morning or night for me. And that stove, that certainly done the job, didn't it? That was an expensive stove. That was a stove for a 35-foot boat. I still have it, of course. And I got a new chimney for it last year. Or the year before, and I need a motor for that boat. That motor's been in Alaska 6 times, and we haven't been able to get research. Now, that's too much money. We haven't raised enough to be able to afford a motor, and so we got a Zodiac that's going to hopefully be here tomorrow, and appropriate equipment to go with it is trickling in, and I can put the motor that I'm using on this one, which I bought brand new, and I have a kicker for that, a Honda kicker for it too. That's a Yamaha 8 horsepower. That thing is some good. And about 7 years ago or something, I replaced the motor or the carburetor because it had a flaw. It's a very reliable, but that's got a lot of hours on it too, man. That's been up. I've washed up on the rocks and hurricanes and everything. That boat's been flipped over. And so that boat, now I just retired it. I still have that one here. And it's retired. We have a new one, going to replace it. That hopefully shows up tomorrow. I know it's in the province right now, according to Amazon. So that's a significant step up. We still got to try to raise the funds. It'd be nice to have them both up and running again. You got all these emaciated whales. If you watch my videos, constant presentations on new emaciated whales, that doesn't terrify you. I don't know what does. That really terrifies me. And I feel a bit better when I tell the story, but I have so much material that I'm trying to catch up to cover, which was the intentions tonight until I seen the bizarre story. Nearly 5,000 nuke plant workers suffered internal exposures, Dana. So I know what you're thinking. Dana, they had paper suits on. They should be okay, right? And no. 1,000 paper suits on the one person won't protect you from the gamma shines, the neutron bombardments, the alpha shines, the beta rays, the X-rays, the brutal doses. You couldn't get a nuclear scientist on that site if you had him in. If you had him to a lead-lined sarcophagus, he still wouldn't go there. You're not going there in a paper suit. He won't go within 100 miles of it. He probably won't even go to Tokyo in a paper suit. And he's smart. And he's a scumbag, of course, but he's smart. More serious than a meltdown, Japan government now raises possibility the fuel is melted through all 3 reactors. So they're talking about, because you never ever, as you can see, of number 1 to number 3, so which includes number 2. Far more radioactivity inside the spent fuel ponds than in the reactors, and could well produce damage greater than Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor, it was a small reactor, it was a new reactor. Japan's reactors are decades old. They have 30 years of inventories at the top of them. They're massive uranium plutonium reactor cores. And so each of them are equal to 100 Chernobyls, and there's around 9 in each building. So roughly, I would say it's equal to 4,000 Chernobyls, because one of the reactors, 3, was a plutonium mixed oxide fuel reactor, which is reclaimed uranium, reclaimed plutonium. This is horrific stuff that shouldn't exist. And you have no idea, when you take that out and put it in a fuel pool, the emissions from that are like nothing else we have on the periodic tables. And we already don't have an immune trigger for the other radiation. So creating more different isotopes is hellish, and they're doing that as a science experiment. That's the reason no 2 plutonium mixed oxide fuel reactors are the same. They're all, just to give you an idea how twisted and sadistic and sick this industry actually is. It's contaminating your planet on purpose, and they go through so much. As I played in the preamble, there was a short video of Lorraine Moret. You'll find it in my video section. You're in the live section if you're watching this. If you go to my video section, you'll see a lady stood up with a microphone 5-6 videos back, and watch that. And she's talking about depleted uranium. So 35.7 million ammunitions with a core of depleted uranium. These are dirty bombs. Each of them are dirty bombs. They're not tipped, they're not coated. And so they have tenders out to get rid of them. And the way to get rid of them is the most toxic way imaginable to the ecosystem. But they've been down in Iran spraying everything, everywhere, with these dirty bombs. The A-10 Warthog shoots nothing but dirty bombs. Not tipped, not coated. Each reactor holds 3,450 spent fuel assemblies. Each fuel assembly is, and the reason there's so much is because they're 30 years old, right? But we're talking about each pool. There's 2 pools, and you don't have a repository, so where do you think they're storing all of this? So saying that there's only 580 assemblies when each building has at least 3,450 assemblies, and that the common spent fuel pool had, now we know the common spent fuel pool window was down low, and that the tsunami ran right through it, which meant it didn't get circulation. If it doesn't get circulation, then it'll melt down. It'll denigrate very quickly, and eventually, buddy from the World Nuclear Association talking that video played earlier from Bloomberg, he said the fuel pools were gone dry. Well, if the fuel pool goes dry, the zirconium cladding, when it's exposed to air, will ignite. It'll burn at 1,800 degrees, and that'll light up the plutonium uranium pellets, which are also covered in zirconium cladding. It's all gone. So it's the worst case scenario, because you're talking about anywhere from 10 to 15 reactor cores at the top of the buildings, and the 2 fuel pools ignited and dispersed. And the problem with that ignition of the fuel pools is the fuel rods are turned into particulates. They're very small, they're extraordinarily hot, And they also have another attribute where they're splitting atoms forever. And we have a plume that covered the entire planet in about 20 days to 30 days, according to all the institutions and shakers and movers. And the particulates, wherever they land, they're going to be splitting atoms for millions of years. So they're perpetual machines, each particle. So it's like a biological, it is a biological weapon. We're in real trouble, and we need to push back. The industry is producing more because we're not pushing back. And they effectively kettled me, isolated me, and censored me. And the idea, and I know they're doing that to me, I have no illusions about it for a very long time, but I also know that these presentations will get you educated, and I can create a lot of people like me that can't be tricked and can't be manipulated and can't be deceived and can't be coerced and have good intentions. I just have a blind faith. And that's enough to dedicate my life to it, because this is the most important story. This is the story of humanity. This is also the story of the death of the planet. The radiation of 80 years of emissions eventually will get us anyway. But we can claw back something, and we have an obligation to try. And we don't have an obligation not to try. We're fortunate to be in a position to try. And we're very effective at telling and countering and auditing the perpetual propaganda machine every day. All we do is typically try to cover the lies the nuclear industry told today. And we can't come close to covering all of them because there's so much of it. I have gave it a good go many years, but also there is no nuclear renaissance, I think, because we exist, right? TEPCO to begin removal of nuclear fuel rods from Fukushima No. 2 next month. This story came out the 28th. I think that was Friday, was it? I remember, Thursday night, I think it was. Yeah. Yeah, May the 28th? Yeah, so last show, when the show was over, I sat down, and my typical wind down is to go to the news again and start gathering up stuff. That's how I wind down. That's my favorite way to... My favorite thing to wind down is to go out and read stupid amount of nuclear propaganda and put together audit of that. Target completion by 2028. So this story came out, and I said, well, it was really going to be... Because we've heard some similar stories of other stuff, but didn't come to fruition, right? And I grabbed it and put it in my immediate folders. And then I was waiting, because I do the news cycle all the time. And then today it showed up in mass. Now remember, I slept in today till noon. I didn't sleep in, I came out and got in the living room in a chair, and then slept again. Like 8 o'clock or something, slept again till noon. Trying to heal, because I'm not doing that good. Everything's a struggle for me, and everything is very slow for me. Remember, it took a long time for me to learn to walk again, right? So that's just the cards I'm dealt with. And it was most likely to give me the opportunity to do the things I'm doing now, right? For 25 years. It keeps me grounded, let's put it that way. Because life is precious, and people don't realize it when you don't have your health, right? All parts of the fuel rods, until you have your health deteriorates, and you appreciate how precious life really is, and how fortunate I really had been to enjoy the things I did enjoy, have the freedom and the ability to do the things I've done. I haven't had a boring life, that's for sure. All parts of the fuel rods appear to have melted at all 3 reactors. Emits who? including number 2? Data shows meltdown occurred at number 2 reactor. No, Dana, they're getting all the fuel out of the pool. They're getting what? Reactor core out of the pool. Where's all the other reactor cores to? I showed you earlier. How does that work? You never got in the building for 15 years, now you're la-di-da-di-da-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm special, I'm pro-nuclear. Authorities hid the radioactive plume forecast to avoid evacuation. That's murder. That's the New York Times. May 28, TEPCO stated in the release that the removal of spent nuclear fuel from number 2 will commence next month, with the goal of completing the process in 2 years' time, 2028. So why are you showing us this picture for? What has this got to do with it? A bunch of morons around tanks, really? The pool of number 2 currently contains 615 nuclear fuel rods. Well, how does that work? You had a running reactor. It's 3 decades old. And every year, 14 months, you're putting 1/3 of the reactor core in the pool. It's at least 10 years before you can move that out, start moving some of that out. You couldn't move it anywhere because the common spent fuel pool was stuffed. So you don't have anywhere else to move it to. And your temporary pool, which is the exact same as your fuel pool, at the top of each of the same buildings, was stuffed too. And you had changed the laws to pack them even closer because you didn't have a repository in Japan or anywhere else on the planet. So your entire inventories for 30 years were at the top of the buildings. The 1,650 fuel rods is a year's worth of fuel. So where's the other 30 years of fuel, scumbags? And why are you saying fuel rods for? Because these are fuel assemblies. I said he said fuel rods over and over and over. Fuel rods. See that? They didn't drive that down your throat, did they? Potential global catastrophe from Fukushima Unit 2 highly radioactive fuel. Reactor could be destroyed, making Tokyo uninhabitable. This is the most dreaded scenario. It's already partially liquefying below the reactors. Yeah, but the fuel pools are okay, Dana. Just shut up, stupid. Get back in your closet and suck your thumb, will you? Look, they already done this lie to you before. This is 2013. Pretending they're on top of Reactor 4. They've done the same thing for Reactor 4. They've done the same thing for Reactor 3. Reactor 3, they claim they're at the top of it, getting fuel out of the pool too. Why would you believe anything these sadistic and twisted and demented monsters ever said? These are both the official pictures. One of them can't be true. One of them can't be true. La 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 la. Du, 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 du. La 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 la. See, how do you have a conversation when he tells so many lies? Like, here they are pretending they're on Reactor 3. Now they're going to pretend they're on top of Reactor 2. Here we are. Ha-ha, we're at Reactor 3, Dana. Well, there's Reactor 3. The fuel pool is at the top of the building. Same as the diagram. There's 2 of them in the reactor core. How are you going to get fuel out of that reactor core? Well, don't worry about it, Dana. We did. TEPCO transfers fuel from Fukushima plant number 3 unit pool. Well, the pool is at the top of that building to your left. Oh, they showed a picture of this thing over there coming out of a building that you can't even get close to. Right, they build these contraptions and they reassemble it out there, but that don't mean they're there. You go there, that's a lethal dose. So the media just went to the contraption, shot the video. This is them claiming they're at Fukushima Reactor 3. Here it is here again in 2019. Oh, we're getting the fuel out of the fuel pool at Reactor 3. There's Reactor 3. They built this contraption. It doesn't physically touch the building. And look at the debris to your left on all the rooftops of the red over there. They didn't clean that up, but it looks like this on the inside. They built this contraption. It doesn't physically touch that contraption over there. And they're allegedly in there getting the first batch in 2019. Do you believe them? Are you gullible? Are you naive? Fuel removal for Fukushima No. 2 reactor pool to begin Tuesday. That's yesterday's headline. Is the day the second already? My goodness. Another month running away. I got 5 months already ran away, mate. I've been busted up the entire time. Tough life, man. I have to suck it up all day, every day. Just. I guess it's what I'm meant to do, I suppose, right? You know, the little things I'm doing. I want to go bash the entire nuclear industry is what I really want to do. That's the only thing that will ever make me truly happy. Is the ability to come after the nuclear industry, litigate the pricks. Every chance we get now. We got a big collection of them that we want to go hammer. Right? There should be an audit of the nuclear industry. And anybody found guilty of cover-up should lose their life savings, their pensions. They should be in jail for the rest of their life. Their assets should be liquidated and sold to pay for restitution of the victims. I don't need anything. I just want to see this a done deal. The work is considered a key step in the process of decommissioning the plant, alongside removing the fuel debris. Initially, it was planned to start more than 8 years earlier. But, you know, everything melted down. Couldn't get anybody to go along with the story back then. Similar work already completed at Reactor 3 and Reactor 4. Oh yeah, they got all the fuel out of Reactor 3. You know, they're at the top of the building. Who are you going to believe? The lawyers and the media are your own two eyes. All the fuel at Reactor 3 was ejected right into the building. Both fuel pools and the reactor cores were kicked a kilometer up in the air. And if you watch the videos out there, you'll see it falling back down and burning as it's coming back down. Not the conventional fire, but atomizing and aerosoling. And the plume doubled every second because everything is splitting atoms at the speed of light every second. They built it off-site, assembled it around the building, and then sold humanity out, saying they're at the top of the building, which is absurd. In their paper suits, even more absurd. How evil do you got to be to participate in those lies on top of that? Like the media that claimed they were there. And Rupert Winfield Hayes claimed is in that picture. Rupert Winfield Hayes is one of these people there. Same guy who said all the tanks were full in early 2013 is the same guy who claimed he was at the top of the building in 2013. It's absurd, eh? You can see right into the building, even if you didn't get to see the other stuff I show you, right? The destructions of the buildings. Does that look like a 19-story, 190-foot, 65-meter building to you? They're scum. The whole industry is nothing but degenerate scum. Everything there. I've never seen anything good come from the nuclear industry. And I'm assuming it's because you got to be a scumbag just to get a job. There is nothing left. And they're doing the same thing now for Reactor 2. And I don't think this will be the last video we do about it. The censorship is hideous again. Monstrous, really, the censorship on me. Let me show you another little thing. You see these contraptions here? That's gapping holes like that over there. And these contraptions were lifted in there with a crane. And they have a system to hook on. And that's what holds them there. And then they'll brace it with other systems of the outside. So that there will get covered up with a contraption like that, basically, because when you look at what really happened to your left, the fuel pools were at the top of these skyscrapers. Send us people who don't mind dying. And you can see big chunks of the fuel pools coming back down to Earth. And you see the plume behind it. That plume doubles every second. And it took something like 20 to 30 days for the plume to cover the whole planet. Let me give you an idea what I mean by that. Because if you've never been here, it's confusing. And so I've always tried to take into account that not everybody has been here before and seen. This was the French government's model based on a spike in North America of 1 million to 10 million atoms. So think of a snowstorm, starts in Japan, and by the time you get to 20 days, the snowstorm covers the whole planet. Snow never melts and never goes away, never stops snowing, and every snowflake attacks everything with a pulse of energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. And it can pulse energy hundreds of feet from just a single atom. But imagine a snowstorm of these atoms. Now realize this is 30 days in. You can't see it, or hear it, or taste it, or smell it, or touch it, or perceive it. But it's permanent. It's in every leaf, every branch, every tree branch, every facet of the ecosystem. And it's hard to comprehend how a couple of buildings has this particular attribute to cause an extinction event worldwide. My playlist is full. It's full of documentation to help you come to terms with that. TEPCO transfers some fuel from Fukushima plant number 3 unit. 2019, I think. Let me go backwards. Yeah, I think, well, this is, not think, I know it is, 2019. It'll probably show up here. This is media claiming they're at the top of the building. This is absurdness. And the fuel pool is intact of a building where a building we know ejected their inventories there. The building we know the fuel pools don't exist. There's an absurd amount of people willing to go out and pretend that they're at the top of the building. Look at the guy with the megaphone on his shoulders, for God's sakes. The number 3 reactor. Ha! The best CNET photographies. Fake reactors. They're not at the top of that building. The building top doesn't exist. The fuel pool, that doesn't exist. Like, that is not at the very top of that building over there where it's supposed to be. They're doing the same thing now for Reactor 2. And tell the same lies. You'll never see this picture anywhere else. You'll never see that anywhere else. You'll never see this anywhere else. And see the debris on the roof to your left that time. Hello, everybody. Is it time for a worldwide nuclear industry audit in light of Japan's Reactor 2 fuel pool allegations? What was the headline for the show tonight? Is the nuclear industry hiding the truth? Japan's Reactor 2 fuel pool dispute sets off alarm bells. I'm trying not to be too confrontational. We've certainly done lots of that. It doesn't mean I'm not angry at this industry. See the debris on the roof down there and the debris on the turbine building in the center with the circle red. This is the stump of Reactor 4 is right here. See where my finger is pointing? The damage is right down to the ground, by the way. But those corners are there because those corners are missing. So they built this contraption up there. There's 3 white panels right there. They're They're put there by a remote controlled crane and they hung by gravity. And then that's reactor 3. So they're right alongside of each other. Look at the debris on the roofs down there. Why didn't they clean that up? Why not clean that up? Excuse me. Why not clean that up if it looks this nice and suspended magically 150 feet above the stump over there? Does that make sense? Similar work has already been completed at number 3, reactor, where they allegedly removed all the fuel, right? They faked reactor 3 and they faked reactor 4. Faked reactor 4 and reactor 4, which they faked. Now they're faking reactor 2. Doomsday-like reaction, what the hell is a reaction, Dana? I don't know. Doomsday-like radiation release of fire and pool at Unit 4. It would be a global catastrophe. Well, this is day 2 or just the second week or something. I can show you all 4 sides of that building, and I don't know if we'll get to it tonight, but look at this bizarre picture. Paper suits, perfect shape, no dirt on them, no tears into them. How do you not tear a paper suit at a construction site? How does that work? And they're allegedly coming out of reactor 4, right to the unsuspecting consumer who watches the mainstream media. These are most likely not even there. This is most likely Photoshop. Or they're just people that died that day because TEPCO gave them $100 and some sake. Because they got them off the floors of the bus stations where they hang out. It's the same as this. These people are not in Japan. There's 70 identical reactors in the United States. Arnie Gunnarsson and Helen Caldercott sold you the same lies. Just bear with me. I'll find it for you. Pretty burnt out here. My apologies. I'm normally a lot more chippy and sarcastic and every other thing nice. Okay, this one. Oh yeah, this one. TEPCO went in, and I guess Helen Caldicott will pop up first. She's going to say, I put pictures in there to help articulate it, same as Arnie Gunnarsson. She's going to say it looks like that, not like this. I'll try to keep on the volume.
Building 4 is also similarly fragile, and it's got a huge cooling pool on top with all its fuel rods, but they have been removing them. And it's been a very delicate procedure, and they've removed almost all. So if that collapsed now, I think it would probably be okay.
4. So how can Unit 4, how can you get all the fuel out of that pool? Look at the height of the building when the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. And she works hand in hand with Gunderson.
Unit 4 was damaged twice.
Now that's his video, and it doesn't stay where I wanted it to stay the whole time. But that's the fuel pool for reactor 4, where I put his video.
It was damaged by all of the earthquakes that occurred, and it was also damaged by a series of explosions over the first week or two of the accident. So the building is structurally weakened. Now, Tokyo Electric.
That building is structurally weakened. Gee, go figure.
Acknowledged that. They went in.
So he said TEPCO acknowledges that, because I keep cutting him off. Turn it up a bit. I'll go back a little bit. TEPCO acknowledged that they went in the nuclear meltdown, Dana. Oh, okay.
The building is structurally weakened. Now, Tokyo Electric's acknowledged that. They went in May and June.
So this is the bottom part of a 190-foot building. The fuel pool is about 165 feet above the ground.
Of last year. This is more than a year ago, and put an enormous number of extra structural supports directly under the fuel pool.
So he's saying TEPCO employees went in and put structural supports under the fuel pool so that wouldn't happen. So, so that's Ernie Gunnarsson cutting your throat. And remember, he's married to Maggie. She was a spokesperson for the nuclear industry for 2 decades. And Helen Caldicott, 14 anti-nuclear books. This was with Talking Stick TV with Mike. He's a lovely fella. And she's done this interview several hundred times, claiming that everything was still intact. And I play one more. She was challenged about that, and she still maintained that fabled story. I'll get it for you. She was asked, does it really, and I put pictures here. So her video is the center little square. I put these pictures, they'll get clearer when I play the video. That's Reactor 4, and that's the fuel pool over there. That's what she's being asked. Does it look like that, or does it look like this? And this is a lady who sold 14 bestseller anti-nuclear books. It's called, what she done is social engineering, where she made people stupid.
Let me ask you this. You said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
Well, it doesn't. She was challenged, and she doubled down. So here's what 4 sides of Reactor 4 actually looked like originally. This is what, at the time she done the interview, this is what it looked like. It was rubble. So when you zoom in on the contraption that they put on top of it, and you'll never see these pictures anywhere else, you can see all the debris, and you can see the flimsy structure. The contraption they put around it was built off-site and then assembled with cranes and homeless people. It doesn't physically touch the actual building for obvious reasons, right? And so this was part of the construction. Everything is empty. So when you build this up, where those panels to is just as empty as what you're looking at right here. Right, so when you look at the side view, you can see in the center, it doesn't physically touch the building. It's cantilevered over. See the destruction to your far corner? See the debris on the roof in your far left-hand corner? And remember, these are 15-year-old pictures. These are TEPCO's pictures, not my pictures, so they're very grainy, but hopefully to give you some insight. And so this is the official picture right here from TEPCO's website. So this is what you got. Like, you can see the destruction. This is both of these are TEPCO's pictures. So they're saying at the top of that, it looks like the building to your left. We've seen lots of versions from the medias, right, doing the same thing. And then they faked that, so they faked Reactor 3 also. They certainly faked Reactor 4, my goodness. What the hell is this? What are they doing? What are people in paper suits doing at Reactor 4? What the hell is this? Is this Photoshop, or what the hell is going on? I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was Photoshop. So I zoomed in, you can see the people directly behind me back there, some with their tungsten vest on or whatever. It makes no sense. And look at it like zombies, the way they walk. Typical if you're trying to fake a picture, right, for Photoshop. That's how you would hold your arms and that. like when you walk, let me go backwards for 1 second. When you walk, you see his arms and his arms, how straight they are? Do you walk like that? Do you know anybody that walks like that? But if you're doing if you're just getting your picture in front of a green screen, somebody goes over, turn left, turn right, that's probably how you're going to hold your arm, right? And then this guy almost like he's running. Last week we covered pictures of him where they had missing legs and missing hands because of the green screen. They did such a shitty job on it. But I mean, this is bizarre stuff. He doesn't look proper at all, does he? He's all messed up, that guy. Got your little zombies. Everybody got their zombies. So they faked Reactor 4. Clearly. And when inside of it is beautiful, right to your left. Right to your left, that's what it looks like, allegedly. 150 feet above that. And so this is outside what it looked like. I'll zoom in for you a bit. So they didn't clean up anything on the outside, but it's beautiful, absolutely stunning on the inside. Oh, okay. Gotcha. That's what it looks like on the outside currently. And to your left is what they say it looks like on the inside. So do you really think they're not doing that to Reactor 2 too? The exact same story? They've done it for Reactor 3 as I showed you, clearly. Similar work has already been completed, number 3, number 4 reactor, according to TEPCO. The minimum, absurdly irrelevant amount of fuel, which is, it's 1 million pounds. They're claiming that there will be transferred to a common spent fuel pool. Well, these pictures were released in 2021. There was 736 of them. I actually done quite a few presentations. Look up the one, 736 mystery pictures on this site. Dana Durnford, environmentalist Dana Durnford. And so this is a common spent fuel pool. Why is it pixelated out completely? And up behind it, you see containers. They were washed up by the tsunami in that spot. Tsunami ran right through both sides of it and the building itself. And the reactors. And these shots were from a drone where when you zoomed in, most of the reactor buildings are redacted. And the common spent fuel pool, which is up right there in the corner across from Reactor 4, is completely redacted. So why is the common spent fuel pool completely redacted? This is the same common spent fuel pool where they're going to transfer the fuel from Reactor 2, just like they done for Reactor 3 and Reactor 4, they put that in the common spent fuel pool too. But as I showed you, hopefully, enough evidence that you'll agree with me that they're faking it the same as they faked Reactor 3 as I showed you and Reactor 4 as I showed you. And if John and Lake, go back to my video later and watch my research expeditions. You'll see beaches and boats and stuff. And that'll give you more insight. Dead whales. That's what I'm supposed to be covering tonight, but the jokers, the serial killers, the planet annihilators, the ecological machine, destruction machine, nuclear industry. Nuclear is a snuff machine, and it's snuffing out your entire planet. And the only starfish, like I say, I found were mutated starfish, like that. And, I mean, this is of cancer tumors. Tumored starfish. There's the world's best dog right there, look. She's something special, that dog. She was the only color we've seen on any of the beaches. Like, if you don't understand what I mean by a snuff machine, let me play this clip for you. This is Lorraine Moret. She's going to talk about depleted uranium munitions. It used to be called DOLRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material. It's gone through a chain reaction, And it's incredibly toxic. And they put it in weapons and bullets. And the A-10 Warthog only shoots these particular munitions. It's a short video, probably the most important video.
Estimates of depleted uranium weapons used in 1991 now range from the Pentagon's admitted 325 tons, and that's only bullets, to other scientific bodies who put the figure as high as 900 tons. A Warthog shoots 1.5 tons of bullets in 1 minute. In the 2003 Gulf War, estimates of 2,200 tons have been given. One of the Japanese physicists who came to our Hamburg conference calculated that 800 tons of depleted uranium, if it's released into the air, is the atomicity equivalent, or the equivalent number of radioactive atoms, as 41,000 Nagasaki bombs. We have released over 250,000 Nagasaki bombs, equivalent radiation, into our atmosphere. But what's even more alarming is that the McAllister bomb factory in Oklahoma, McAllister, Oklahoma, was applying for relicensing at the NRC in order to be able to continue manufacturing DU weapons. And in order to maintain level 1 status, which they have to do to get relicensed, they must be able to ship 1,600 tons of depleted uranium weapons a day. That's 166,000 Nagasaki bombs of radiation. It's 20 train car loads of DU going out of that factory every day. It's only one of 4 U.S. Army bomb factories. And altogether, at all 4 bomb factories at any one time, they are allowed by the...
Hang on, I screwed that up. I wanted to play that in the background.
Estimates of depleted DU going out of the Nagasaki bombs of radiation.
Hang on.
Of depleted uranium weapons a day. That's 166,000 Nagasaki bombs of radiation. It's 20 train car loads of DU going out of that factory every day. It's only one of 4 U.S. Army bomb factories. And altogether, at all 4 bomb factories at any one time, they are allowed by the NRC to have up to 44,000 tons of DU on site. That's 4.5 million Nagasaki bombs.
4.5 million Nagasaki bombs on site in dirty bombs. This is a song about Reactor 2, where they recovered less than a gram over a 6-year period. The construction included, and I think it was $48 million to build this arm. And so James had put together this song called Less Than a Gram. And that's our closer tonight. You have a great night. Hugs for everybody. My apologies for being slack. I'll get there. I'm getting there. Take care.
Right beside old Unit 3 sits a shell-marked waste, you see. Tanks of resin stacked with care, holding what the pumps caught there. TEPCO field 2 plans to show. One says yes, the other no. Each awaits a coming call. Neither clears the path at all. Less than a gram, that's what they've got from Unit 2, and that was a lot. Fuel remains in buried rooms while they measure water plumes. Early 30s, so they say. when the work might get underway. Decommission down the line, mid-century's hopeful sign. 880 tons remain, none retrieved from three's domain. They debate what space to claim, still the Buildington stays the same.